The MCU has had its fair share of incredible talent over the years. From the original Avengers and those who came to join them to the villains and side characters, a large chunk of the MCU's charm is how much talent they've managed to amass and how well those people have gone on to portray their respective characters and interact with the others. Some are seen as amazing actors who could play whatever role they wanted. Others are seen as good only as their respective superheroes, and some are even considered the opposite, where they're good actors but aren't that great in the MCU. Now, excluding their heroic or villainous counterparts, which role is each MCU actor's absolute best? With an absolute gaggle to choose from, I've chosen 5 of the more intriguing careers to do a deeper dive on in order to answer that one simple question. Starting off with one of our original Avengers, Scarlett Johansson has been a force in Hollywood for so long now that according to some lists, she is in fact the most profitable actor of all time. With many hits before and during her MCU time, this was a hard list to narrow down, but I definitely do like my top 3. We'll start with her. Only appearing as the voice of Joaquin Phoenix's AI lover, Samantha, the emotion conveyed by just her voice is immeasurable and brings such an additional layer of heartache and charm to this strange and wonderful movie. Despite her massive popularity and recognizable voice, you don't hear Samantha and just think, oh, that's ScarJo, despite the fact that it does sound like her. She isn't necessarily doing a new voice or employing any sort of an accent. She simply manages to transcend her voice by adding so much emotion behind whatever she might be saying, whether it be with loving sentiments of a budding romance or admittance that Joaquin Phoenix is merely one of hundreds of others who Samantha is chatting to whom she has also fallen in love with. Her excellence within a role goes far past strictly romantics as well. As a virtual assistant purchased by Joaquin Phoenix to be a friend first and foremost, there are a lot of moments early on where she has to convey a slight lack of humanity to signify that she is in fact AI. Yet where her performance shined through is in its intense humanity. It is remarkable, and reminiscent of Ryan Gosling's role as Kay in Blade Runner 2049, where he succeeds in that role so unbelievably well due to this ineffable ability to express such a wide range of powerful emotions while playing as a character programmed to not show emotions. Where he does it through his eyes and body, Scarlett Johansson does this all through her voice. It's an incredibly unique movie, as I've said a few times, and I could never do it proper justice in a blurb like this. But she is outstanding, elevating an excellent movie every single time she has any role within it, and one of the movies I'll speak about during this video that I would recommend the most. Next under consideration is a duo of movies that came out in the exact same year as Endgame, which truly was the year of Scarlett Johansson: Marriage Story and Jojo Rabbit. Now, while Jojo Rabbit might be the best of these 3 movies, boasting incredibly unique accolades such as the funniest on-screen Hitler and easily the best child acting I've ever seen in my entire life, this is probably her 3rd best role here. Amazing nonetheless, but she doesn't manage to last until the end of the film, and I don't know. I just think this is her least memorable of the 3. To be clear, had this performance in this movie been on some of our other actors' lists today, it'd probably win. She is fantastic in this, and the movie itself is incredible as well, but her is so wholly unique and creative, and her emotional performance in Marriage Story opposite Adam Driver is just out of this world good. Marriage Story is one of the most intense films I've ever seen, showcasing 2 of this era's best actors giving perhaps their very best performances. After a somewhat amicable divorce slowly starts to include lawyers, we see 2 former lovers devolve into bouts of hate and vitriol that crescendo into all-out screaming matches, wall punching, lamenting of what they'd given up while being together, one begging the other would die, all to end in them consoling each other and swiftly apologizing for going overboard. Yeah, I'm talking about that scene. It epitomizes this raw, heartbreaking, hyper-realistic film, and every scene just grabs hold of your emotions and forces you on this vicious, joyless voyage through regret and fear and failure, and just takes your heart and rips it right open and peers inside your very soul, and yeah, this is her best performance. Jesus. There's even some charm and heart, and despite what I just said, some level of cuteness and good feels to be had here and there within this masterpiece. This is one of the best performances ever, and I could say the same about Adam Driver's role, where they both just make each other even better. An amazing movie worthy of number 1 on any actor's list, and a fitting one to start off with. Next is Tom Holland, who I think certainly has the weakest resume in this video. Because of that, we'll more or less cut to the chase. I think there's only one truly great Tom Holland performance where he isn't adorned by a tight red and blue suit, and it's this movie's existence that really made me want to include him in this video. Admittedly, he is actually pretty solid in The Lost City of Z, playing a pretty small but good role. But it's tough to say how he did in Uncharted. As someone who has sadly not played the games yet, there are lots of great games, guys, I can't have played them all, I'm getting to it. It's really tough to know how well he portrayed Nathan Drake. People seem relatively split, though it's rare to see someone say he absolutely nailed it and the movie was excellent. The debate seems to be whether he was bad or pretty good. Regardless, his aforementioned excellent performance, for me, was in 2020's The Devil All the Time. Overshadowed a pretty fair amount by yet another immaculate and intense Robert Pattinson performance, Tom Holland sports his own fun accent while portraying Arvin, a rough and tumble kid fiercely protective of his underage sister, whom Pattinson's sleazy priest has impregnated and ignored. Acting across from Pattinson in a particularly intense scene, Pattinson gives it his all and Holland rises to the occasion, matching his energy and efficiency and growing on his already excellent performance. He ultimately murders Pattinson before going on a brief little murder spree, and before all of this, he beats the shit out of a bunch of kids who are picking on his little sister. Not really the type of role you'd even expect him to take, let alone excel in, is it? I always really liked him in Spider-Man, but after a few of his movies flopped and he didn't exactly stand out in them, I sort of got caught thinking maybe he wasn't an excellent actor, but rather just an excellent Spider-Man / Peter Parker. And make no bones about it, I absolutely do think he is great in the MCU. But after seeing this movie, man, Tom Holland can act. I urge anyone who doubts me to watch this film, and frankly I urge anyone to watch it regardless, as there's plenty else to like. For you Gossip Girl fans, it's even got Carter Baizen hunting down Holland in the third act of the film. Oh, he plays someone in the MCU, doesn't he? Well, maybe I'll feature Sebastian Stan in a part 2 for this video if it performs well enough. Make sure to like and subscribe if that's something— yeah, sorry, this is the part of the video where I have to do this part— you'd be interested in, and please comment who you think I should feature next. There's obviously many more actors and actresses I could feature in a video like this, and I'd love to hear who you guys want to see most. Next is our other British heartthrob, Bumpernickel Cucumberpatch, who has turned in many amazing roles in his career, but for me there were 3 specific roles that shot into my mind when I started writing this, which is becoming a theme throughout this script. It's almost like I planned it that way. One of his most recent movies, The Power of the Dog, is a very odd film that I quite enjoyed. And although many aspects of this movie were well handled and well conceived, Benedict Cumberbatch as Phil Burbank really is practically solely responsible for how good I think this movie is. Playing an extremely manly, cruel, and cold man, he strikes up something of a friendship with his brother's new son-in-law, Peter. A bit of a psycho in his own right, Peter slowly chips away at Cumberbatch's rigorously maintained rough exterior, and the more we learn about him, the more enigmatic he becomes. The movie and their dynamic sort of hints at Phil's repressed homosexuality, and the lack of a final answer in that department only serves to deepen his depth and mystery. Cumberbatch just plays this role so strongly and brings charisma to a character who is more or less a piece of shit we are never really told to remotely care for. Just wonderful. In stark contrast to that role, the first movie I ever saw him in was The Imitation Game opposite Keira Knightley, where he plays the brilliant and very troubled Alan Turing while he helped crack the Nazis' Enigma code in World War II. He plays this role with similar skill, showcasing his arrogance, his lack of social awareness, his budding romance with Keira Knightley, and then his acceptance that he's gay, something illegal in England at the time that eventually got him chemically castrated and led to his suicide. This movie clearly had a lot to say and a fascinating story to tell, and at the center of it all, holding everything together and making it work so well, is of course Benedict Cumberbatch. This would probably be my vote for not only his best movie performance, but the best movie he's ever been in as well. This movie has a lot of things going for it, but the presence of Benedict Cumberbatch bringing such unique and captivating energy to every scene really takes it to the next level. But was he born for this role? I mean, he does play Turing really well, but does he capture his spirit better than anyone else ever could have? I mean, maybe, actually, it's really good. I don't know Alan Turing well enough to make that call, but I guess it is conceivable. But you know who I do know well enough to make that call for? Someone who has 60-odd stories written about them from someone else's perspective in the form of detective mystery novels. Does Alan Turing have 60-odd stories written about him from someone else's perspective in the form of detective mystery novels? No. Then what does that tell you? That this whole part of the video has gone to shit and no one can remember what I'm even talking about at this point? Yeah, but what else? Yeah, that's right. Benedict Cumberbatch is Sherlock Holmes, and it's by far the best damn thing he's ever done. I love BBC's Sherlock so much. Now, is he the most perfectly accurate book portrayal imaginable? Not exactly, but he is pretty close in most regards. One thing he does insanely well is capture the essence of Sherlock Holmes. He's easily recognizable as the world's greatest detective, both in mannerisms, wardrobe, and appearance. Truly, he looks just exquisite for the character. Again, perfectly book accurate, well, maybe not to a T, but that doesn't mean looking at this man doesn't scream Sherlock Holmes in a way that very few literary portrayals ever do. The other thing he does so well is make this character his own. Without ever straying too far from the source material, he is able to portray any level of arrogance, recklessness, cleverness, cruelty, ignorance, or even heart and pass it off as exactly what this Sherlock Holmes would do. He brings a level of believability to this character that, for my money, no one has ever brought better, despite this being a pretty dramatic version of the character. The show has kind of gone through a metamorphosis over the last few years. Once the absolute darling of viewers everywhere, it has provoked the ire of many fans for a few reasons, but it very rarely has anything to do with Cumberbatch. While I still think the show is great, it does have its fair share of flaws, but by George, do none of them revolve around this long coat-wearing young man. It also doesn't hurt that some of his best arcs involve him playing opposite Andrew Scott's Jim Moriarty, who is just the best character I've ever seen in my entire life. No, second best. For the modern era, some might say RDJ is better. While I disagree, I respect the opinion. But unlike with a debate such as Spider-Man or even Batman to a slightly lesser degree, no one really argues that RDJ is amazing and Cumberbatch sucks, or vice versa. Most acknowledge they both turn in incredible performances and simply state who they think has the edge for one reason or another. How lucky we Sherlock Holmes fans truly are. Benedict Cumberbatch was born to play this role in the exact same way RDJ was born for Iron Man. Christian Bale was born for Patrick Bateman, J.K. Simmons for J. Jonah Jameson, and Matthew Lillard for Shaggy. The dog they cast for that movie is pretty good too, actually. A contentious choice to even put on this list, Brie Larson is an absolutely phenomenal actress, despite what some people might propagate. If we're being honest though, and it does pain me to say, but if you've only ever seen her as Captain Marvel, I don't agree, but I get it. I truly think that is largely not her fault, and in writing the script I even devised a bit of a hypothesis about why she hasn't resonated with audiences well during her tenure in the MCU, but more on that later. Scott Pilgrim. This scene alone? more than enough to get her performance mentioned here, but she's also fantastic in the rest of her screen time in this movie too. Playing a role unlike most of her other films where she's basically just going for pure comedy, she nails it. In an excellent comedic movie, she is one of its many highlights, but sadly for her character in this movie, she goes back to her roots for the other two movies I truly consider to be her best in an absolute slugfest. I'm talking about her Oscar-winning role in Room and her spectacular performance in Short Term 12. Room is a tough goddamn watch where we see Brie Larson and her 5-year-old son Jack as they're being held hostage in a tiny room by their kidnapper. Their kidnapper is Jack's biological... Oh, I put son in the script. Their kidnapper is Jack's biological father, and he's lived there his entire life. It's a bleak, tense, largely joyless watch. There is some joy to be found within the main character's name, however. The first chunk revolves around Jack and Joy's incredibly depressing life. Having been born in this room and never shown an ounce of the outside world, Joy tells Jack that Room is all that the world is. Everything on the outside is just made up for TV, and Jack lives in some version of peace since he doesn't really know anything else, and Joy provides him with as much love and support as humanly possible. After leaving his closet bedroom and seeing their captor, referred to as Old Nick, sleeping in the bed with Joy, he lashes out and slaps Old Nick, yelling at him to get away from her. I don't want to just provide the synopsis of this movie here. After their eventual harrowing escape, they have to adjust to their new life, and it goes about as well as you could expect. Brie Larson plays this unbelievably tortured and destroyed young mother so insanely well that, so well that she won an Oscar for Best Actress, for God's sakes. Imagine escaping that room with your 5-year-old child who had never seen the real world, and he tells you he misses it. Misses the man who kidnapped, tortured, and abused you, truly gave you the worst version of life that humanity had to offer. And now your only source of bliss, your whole world, the only thing you ever even stayed alive for, said he wants to go back? Every line, every look, every piece of physical acting in this is done so masterfully by Larson that you feel every ounce of dread, failure, and outright disgust that she does. And when she tries to take her own life, you don't know if you should root for her to survive, or if you think she'd be better off just letting this horrific world of hers go once and for all. Of course she does survive, and she and Jack grow up, evolve, and they learn to move on from Room. A truly haunting performance where, although others do very well, Brie Larson is doing the vast majority of the heavy lifting scene by scene. Which cannot be said about her other performance in Short Term 12, which features more of an ensemble with her in the lead. I'd like to say this movie features her as a more normal girl with a really hard life. In Room, she has like the worst life a human being could ever be given, but here she's just, dealing with a super stressful job, working with underprivileged and forgotten kids, scheduling an abortion. It kind of seems like there's more under the surface that we don't really know about, more normal, super hard and difficult stuff. But she does get impregnated by her dad when she's a kid, and she has to deal with his release from prison, so... But we don't really learn about that until the movie's final few scenes. Before then, she's just a severely stressed and overtired girl with a lot of things on her plate, both personally and professionally. And yeah, she absolutely nails this role too. She gets to play off of a lot more people in this film. Aside from her boyfriend and coworker, most of her interactions are with her various kids in her group home. One's about to become 18 and age out of the home, one's dealing with pretty intense mental issues, one is being abused by her father but won't admit it. She has formed and continues to build on her relationship with each of these people and many others as we get to see just how hard she works and fights for these kids who society had largely given up on. The exhaustion and perpetual defeat she seems to feel at any given moment is shrugged off in an instant when one of the kids tries to run away, or an accident occurs, or any number of traumatic and emergent stuff happens. Although insanely hard to watch in its own right, this movie has a bit more breathing room and times for some levity, and maybe a bit more hope and optimism sprinkled throughout, though not by much.
Happy 30th, you guys. Everything good in my life is because of you. Salud.
Salud.
Both movies made me cry a ton, both movies depressed the shit out of me, both movies I would highly recommend. Thanks, Brie. Granted, I haven't seen the Marvels yet, so if they gave her some huge trauma arc and she nails it, or she still comes off a little boring or unlikable, then I will adjust my theory. But after watching her play those heavy-hearted, grief-stricken characters so well, I can't help but think her MCU character wouldn't benefit from carrying some of those traits as well. Lastly, we will conclude with a man who has miraculously garnered roughly 200 acting credits in his monumental career, Samuel L. Jackson. It's only fair, given his 200 credits, that he would be the only person in this video to get 4 true considerations as opposed to everyone else's 3. And there are even more I actually considered, such as his other Tarantino role where he stars in The Hateful Eight, and even his relatively maligned, albeit certainly enjoyable, role in Snakes on a Plane. Jackie Brown is an excellent movie, and his performance is great, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't really do it for me. I know for a lot of people that this is that hidden QT gem that deserves love akin to that of his top-tier films, but I just couldn't agree less. I can give it very high praise by saying it doesn't seem out of place in the legendary filmography of one of the greatest directors of our era, but I do think it ranks very close to, if not at the very bottom of said list. Although great, Samuel L. Jackson doesn't do anything transformative or memorable with his role, so I will not declare it his very best. His true top 3 are a touch odd because they're all very different, one being a true starring role in Pulp Fiction, one being a supporting role in Django Unchained, and one being a supporting voice role in The Incredibles. All are excellent, but you already know which one is his best. Frozone is iconic and steals every scene he's in. Steven, head house slave of the lavish Calvin Candy, offers a very unique role where he plays a slave of slightly higher status than other slaves due in part to his long-standing loyalty. It's an undeniably enjoyable and effective role, but it's rather unimpactful. Which is to say that if this role had been played less masterfully, it wouldn't have harmed the movie too dramatically. And it's also pretty brief, so it's hard to call it his best when he has as many great roles as he does. Can shorter appearances still win lists such as this? Just ask Anthony Hopkins or James Earl Jones. Of course they can. But Vader and Hannibal have never been compared to Jules motherfucking Winfield. Truly a film ahead of its time, the one that launched Tarantino from hotshot up-and-comer to a legit star, brought a ton of fresh life into the art form, and did wonders for the actors within it. It helped dramatically propel 2 careers, resurrected 2 more, and there wasn't a bad performance in the damn thing, nor a person whose career didn't greatly appreciate this film being on their resume. There are innumerable reasons why this movie resonated with audience so well, and has stood the test of time, and chief among them is the wonderful performance by Samuel L. Jackson. Some of the most iconic lines in movie history belong to his character. And yes, the dialogue written through it is amazing, but Jackson still elevates it to an unbelievable level. Perfect comedic timing, both aloud and physically, snappy and clever banter, bouts of being genuinely scary, he does it all, and it's hard to ever imagine not crowning this role the best of his long-standing career. I've actually never been the biggest fan of Nick Fury, and I think it's because Marvel doesn't let him swear enough. This man needs to be swearing. And now to end on something fun and a little different. In this video, I truly discussed 3 films for the first 4 people and 4 for the final, for a total of 16 movies. Let's rank them all, because rankings are fun. My main thought process for what ranks higher than another movie is, if you've not seen this movie yet, you should probably go see it. Number 16, Uncharted. Number 15, The Lost City of Z. Neither of these are great movies, though they're not bad. If you like the actors within them, then by all means. Number 14, Jackie Brown. Number 13, The Power of the Dog. Number 12, Room. This tier is movies I genuinely quite like and would recommend to certain people. Good stuff. Number 11, Devil All the Time. Number 10, Short Term 12. Number 9, The Imitation Game. These 3 movies are fantastic, and I would urge just about anybody to watch them. Great performances, great story, just proper good all around. Capital G, good movies. Number 8, Scott Pilgrim. Number 7, Sherlock. Number 6, Marriage Story. Number 5, The Incredibles. These 4 are all very essential viewings in my opinion. One of the best comedies ever made with a ton of cultural relevance, a fantastic television show with equally as much cultural relevance, and The Incredibles, the most culturally significant of the entire bunch. That's the theme for this grouping. Obviously one that isn't on the same level as Marriage Story, but it is fantastic and one of the best movies from a very, very good year of film. Number 4, Her. Her is so damn good. Very unique, very weird, multiple stunning performances, and a premise that has become more realistic and terrifying every day since its release. Number 3, Jojo Rabbit. Taika Waititi at his best, tons of laugh, tons of heart, tons of emotion. Honestly, the classic example of a movie that made me laugh, made me cry, made me cheer. The whole 9 yards. Everyone who hasn't seen it should go see it as soon as they can. Number 2 is Django, and number 1 is Pulp Fiction. The 2 very best Tarantino films. Honestly, what on earth has stopped you from watching these already? Stop what you're doing right now and watch them. Whatever it is you're doing, just, actually wait, sorry. Watch this video until the end, it helps the algorithm. But then go watch them. And thanks for watching. Please consider clicking that cute and inviting subscribe button, as it helps me out just oh so much. And like and comment your thoughts on these fantastic actors and the brilliant movies they've been in. I'm sure at least one, if not more, of my choices annoyed multiple people for one reason or another. So let me know your thoughts. I promise I'll give an earnest response to every single one. This video was a blast to make, and I hope to make more like it in the future. Thanks again. Until next time.